What's up, everyone? Jason here, the king of programming, for another programming review. Today we are reviewing CrossLiftr Mass from Vincent. You guys have requested this program a few times, and when I saw it in the Playbook app, I, of course, wanted to do a review on it. So when we start these videos, I start them all the same way, whether it's your first review you've watched from me or you've watched all my reviews. I want to make sure that everyone watching these reviews has some frame of reference as to what I'm looking at, whether you're a coach or you're just someone that enjoys training. So when I look at these programs, we are thinking about more or less the fundamentals of program design, the basics, things like exercise selection, exercise order, sets, reps, rest intervals, conditioning, what types of conditioning, does the conditioning make sense in terms of the intent of that conditioning? Sometimes we see things that are way outside of what they're trying to do, or we don't see any conditioning at all. So there's obviously a pretty big continuum there where we know that we can either make or break with conditioning, in my opinion. I think conditioning is a vital part of any training program, and any of my programs have conditioning in them. So those are things that I'm looking at so you guys understand what it is makes up a program that's either approved or disapproved. Today, this program consists of what appears to be, to me, based on the name and based on kind of some of the things that I've seen doing a little bit of investigation work here, for someone that is involved in CrossFit but wants to focus more on lifting. Okay, so when we think about someone that is potentially a CrossFitter or a former CrossFitter, there are definitely some things, some low-hanging fruit for those individuals in my mind. And so I want to see if this program is going to satisfy any of those needs. But I really want to dive into the fundamentals of what this program is and whether or not it is a good program. So without further ado, let's get right into it. At first glance, this program is made up of 5 sessions per week. And the split is a lower body, an upper body, a conditioning or core day, and then we essentially repeat that emphasis again, where we do lower and upper. All right, so we've got 4 main strength sessions, and then what appears to be a conditioning session, which I am going to get into whether or not it actually is, but just so you have some frame of reference, this is a 5-day-a-week program. Now, our first day, we've got a warm-up, and then we start off with some hip band pause squat, which looks like more or less an activation drill, if you will, for the main lift of the day, which is a back squat. I do see some description here as far as what we're doing, and again, I'm not really sure whether or not this is going to add to the session or take away. There's obviously a lot that we could discuss with that, but for what it is and what I think it is, just based on what I see here, this would be used as a primer for the squat. Now, personally, I would prime the squat with something else. I would prime the squat with a plyometric drill, just to prime the nervous system and get us ready for what we're about to do. Then I would prime the squat with the actual squat. I would do some more warm-up sets of that squat pattern of the day. I wouldn't necessarily throw in a band or anything like that. I would just make it very straightforward where we are warming up our squat pattern. Now, for the main lift of the day, we've got barbell back squat with descending reps. He does have a tempo in here where he wants you to lower for 2 seconds and 1 second at the bottom. And we're building in weight from 80, 80, and 85 and 85%. Okay, with a 2-second lowering. In my mind, for 5 repetitions, that's going to be too heavy with that tempo for most people. Now, there are people that have more type 1, more slow twitch muscle fiber type that probably won't have any issue with that. Someone like me would probably have issue that I'm more fast twitch, more explosive. This might be tough for me, especially considering we're only resting between 90 seconds to 2 minutes rest. Now, for a CrossFitter or former CrossFitter, when they see the rest interval, they're probably going to rest less than what you're telling them to do. Because the nature of the CrossFit athlete is go, 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 go harder, go longer, kill myself, all that crazy shit that we know about. So I would change this rest interval to be 3 minutes. Okay, I'd be I wouldn't give a range. I'd just say 3 minutes rest between sets, and I would make sure that they understand that we need to rest to get what we want from this. So those would be my criticisms of that. And again, do we need to do that hip band pause squat beforehand? Again, that's kind of just a matter of personal preference. That's not what I would do, but I don't really have a huge issue with that, to be completely honest with you. Now, let's go into our accessory work. So we've got dumbbell Bulgarian split squats. We're doing 4 sets, 12, 10, 10, 8. We're resting 90 seconds. That is a lot of volume. I think we can get it done with a lot less. We could do 3 sets of 8 to 10 per leg, resting 90 seconds to 2 minutes between sets. So more or less, I'm just giving more of a nitpick here. I wouldn't say that this is absolutely terrible. I would say that I would probably go with 3 solid work sets of 8 to 10 reps per leg. okay? And I would keep the rest interval around 90 seconds to 2 minutes. All right, from here, barbell hip thrust, and then we've got some double dumbbell walking lunges, and then we finish off with an AMRAP of air bike and more squatting. So let's just take a look at this day for face value, and let's just think about what it is that we could potentially do to make this day better or go a little bit better. I think, number one, the main lift of the day, we have to rest longer. 90 seconds to 2 minutes is not enough for what you're asking someone to do. The tempo with the percentage, it's a little bit off, okay? It's not terrible, but it's a little bit off, all right? So if you want to use tempos, there has to be some concessions that you make as far as the percentage that you're using on any given lift, okay? So that would be, number one, my main lift. I would likely just do 5x5 for that, and I'd build to a heavy 5, and that's what I would do. I would plug in the barbell hip thrust as my second movement of the day, so I'd move that up one. I'd go with dumbbell Bulgarian split squat as my third movement of the day, and then I would forgo the walking lunges because we've already done single leg. We've done a squat pattern, we've done single leg, we've done a hip hinge pattern. So what are we really missing here? Potentially we could go with, a little bit more direct hamstring or direct glute work, if you will. Of course, we've got the hip thrust, but I like to see maybe some direct hamstring work, some banded leg curls for high reps. That would be a good fit in here, and then some core work, and that would be it for the day. So I think that at face value, this day isn't particularly bad, but it's not particularly good. There's a lot to be desired here, and I think that for anyone that even has a high level of fitness, they're going to be pretty crushed from this session. So that's my feedback. As far as this AMRAP at the end of bike, and it's a 10-minute AMRAP where we're doing more squatting, and we are pedaling on the bike, which is obviously a more of a concentric-based movement, but of course, your legs are already crushed. So how hard are you really going to be able to go for a minute on the air bike? I don't know if I would really classify that as conditioning. I think that, again, what I would do to improve this session is I would squat, I would hip hinge, I would single leg, I would do some banded leg curls, and then some core work, and that would be it for the day. Or a loaded carry, that would be a nice fit in here, okay? So that's it for day one. Let's look at day two, which we know is an upper body day. All right, we've got upper body. So we've got a similar rep scheme that we had for squat. And let's see if we're using a tempo in the same percentages. It's similar percentages, similar rep schemes. I would go higher on the rep schemes. I see a 2-second tempo. 2-second tempo. I don't see anything else. What does 2-second tempo mean? Well, with a lift, we know that we've got a lowering and eccentric phase. We've got potentially a pause or just between our transition phase, our amortization phase. We've got a concentric phase, and then we got potentially a pause at the top. So essentially, we have 4 different places that we could have a tempo. We could have a 2-second lowering, could be a 2-second pause, could be a 2-second raise, or a 2-second at the top. So this 2-second tempo, to me, I don't know what that means, and I want to know exactly what that means. And all he had to do is do the same thing that he did on day one, is say what that is. So I'm not sure what that tempo is. But our second movement in the day is weighted pull-ups, 90 seconds rest, 4 sets of 5. No issue with that. I like it. I think it's great. Are we building in weight? So he's got the same thing here. A tempo again, 1 second, 3 second, 2 second, 1 second. So for a pull-up, normally we would think, well, it's probably the lowering phase of that pull-up, but I'm not sure. So again, that's something where we could easily fix. We could just be very descriptive on what that tempo is. Prescribing a tempo, you could do it a number of ways, but you usually are going to put those numbers in for all 4 phases of the lift. So let's say it's 2, 0, X, 1. 2 would be 2-second lowering, 0 would be 0 pause at the bottom, X would be an explode up, and then 1 would be 1 second pause at the top. Again, that's one way out of many that you can do it, but of course it's got to make sense with the lift that you're using. A pull-up obviously has some very different things that are happening as opposed to something like a row or a squat or a press. So something to definitely be considered with that. And then from here, we've got dumbbell shoulder press, 10, 8, 5, 5. So with this pattern, I would actually go with a higher rep scheme. I would probably go with something in the 8 to 12 range for this lift, as opposed to building in weight. 3-second tempo for all. What does that mean? Again, same feedback. I don't know what that means. Is it 3-second lowering, 3-second pause, so on and so forth. And then our next movement of the day is a dumbbell single arm row. I think I would have supersetted these two, and then he finishes with an EMOM, 16-minute EMOM of barbell sumo high pulls and 15 push-ups. So let's look at what this means. Every 2 minutes, we're doing 12 sumo high pulls and 15 push-ups, and that's across 16 minutes. So we've got 8 sets. So that is what? What is 12 times 8? 96. 15 times 8. My math's not so good. I'm not sure what that is. Danny, you know what 15 times 8 is off the top of your head? It's a lot of fucking volume is what it is, all right? So anyways, you can split it however you want. It's a lot of volume to end this day. I actually think this day is organized a little bit better than our first day. But of course, they're two different styles of training. We've got a lower body session. We've got an upper body session. I think the exercise order is okay. I wouldn't necessarily change anything with it. I would probably be a little bit more descriptive with rest intervals. Also with what I'm asking someone to do in terms of building a weight, or are we doing the same weight across all sets? And then the single arm row and shoulder press, I would superset, and I would do, again, 3 sets, 8 to 12 reps across the board, superset, rest 60 seconds between movements. So you do your shoulder press, rest 60 seconds, do your row, rest 60 seconds, go back and forth until you've completed 3 sets of those. And then this EMOM is just overkill in my opinion. You could do 3 to 4 sets of that. You don't need to do, we've got 8 sets here, so you don't need to do 8 sets of that to do what we need to do. So that's it for day 2. Let's go to our next session, which, if I recall correctly, is a conditioning and core. Conditioning and core. All right, so guys, we've got barbell cycling. This is 3 power clean, 3 front squat, 3 push. For those of you that are CrossFit people, you know this workout. It's called Macho Man. It's a very, very, very hard workout. I've done it several times. I absolutely hate it, but it's one of those workouts you hate and you love because it's very challenging. And if you use a heavy load, you can certainly get a great session. But the question is does this session fit into what we're already doing? I would say no, because we've already done heavy lower, we've done heavy upper. Now we're going into another day, which essentially is full body. We've got a power clean, a front squat, a push press with a heavy load. I think that the recommended load was 50 kilogram for men, 25 for lady. So maybe he's going lighter on this, okay? This is not particularly heavy. This workout tends to be based on that scheme. Again, 3 reps per movement. It's planned to be a heavier workout. He's got it lighter. So if you're going to go lighter with this, you certainly could, but I would certainly ramp that scheme up a little bit higher. He's doing it for 12 minutes. And then we're getting into another EMOM of barbell bench press and push-up. So if you recall correctly, we already just pressed heavy. We did heavy bench press on day 2. Now we're doing heavy bench press on day 3. He gives you recommended weights. I hate recommended weights. How does that pan out for someone that is on a completely different level? I've got a guy on my training that can deadlift 700 pounds. You think if I had him do these recommended weights, it'd be the right fit for him? Probably not. Recommended weights are trash. It doesn't work across the board. We're trying to put people into the same box. Don't do it. Let people scale based on their own ability, but give a clear intent. If I want someone to do barbell cycling work, give them an idea what type of loading we need to be using for us. Light, moderate, heavy, it couldn't be as simple as that. Okay, so that's our second EMOM. And then we've got a core superset. This is the first time I've seen core work in this program. Hanging leg raise and stability ball pike. So basically working the core from the same perspectives with the type of work that we have here in terms of being more anti-extension and more hip flexion based. I think that, again, a lot to be desired there. Cable rope crunches as our second core superset, and hollow hold. So we're essentially training the core in the same exact way, and we're just adding tons of volume to it. So to me, that's just trash. I think we can do a lot better here. We don't need as much as we have here to get a big bang for the buck, and we're training the core only from one perspective versus going multiple perspectives with it. So I think that there's, again, this session definitely isn't conditioning in my mind. It's more local endurance. It's more of kind of just adding more fatigue onto what we've already done in the previous 2 days. So conditioning to me, guys, would be some more cyclical components, we're moving for longer durations. Now, there's various types of conditioning. We have anaerobic, we have aerobic. They're very different in nature. They involve different rep schemes and different movement patterns, as well as different overall structure of how that would potentially work to be sustainable or to be something that's more directed towards power capacity of our anaerobic systems. So there's a lot of ways to go with that. But as a whole, I don't necessarily think that's a conditioning day. I think it's more of just kind of a local endurance day where we're doing, some core work at the end. Okay, so leg day number 2. This is a posterior chain day. If you recall, on day 1, we squatted heavy. We did Bulgarian split squats. We did some air bike with some more squats. We did some walking lunges, and we did some hip thrust. Okay, so today we've got more of a posterior chain focus where we have starting off with a standing calf raise, which, to be completely honest, doesn't make sense with exercise selection to put calf raise first, but I know for people that want to develop the calves, putting it first in the session, that is a strategy I've seen people use that want bigger calves. So if that's what you need to do to grow your calves, by all means do it. But think about how that could potentially affect other things. And in this case, I don't think it's going to be a huge issue. But, again, just something to think about. So we've got a deadlift, essentially pyramid, where we're going down in weights and up, down in reps, but up in weights. And again, he's got a tempo in here, but I don't know what this tempo is for our deadlift. It says 2 second, 2 second, 1 second. And there's 4 sets. First set, warm-up set. So he's building to 90% in 4 sets. That seems pretty quick to build to 90%. Again, that guy I just mentioned, the 700-pound deadlift, do you think he can build to 90% of that in 4 sets? Probably not. Okay, 120 seconds rest, not long enough. Needs to be longer. Then we've got a superset of Anderson squat and more Bulgarian split squat. We're getting into kind of on the level of like, ooh, geez, how's this going to work across a lot of people? Why would I do an Anderson squat, a bottoms-up movement, essentially a concentric-based movement for the squat pattern, superset with a Bulgarian split squat? I don't, that doesn't make sense to me at all. A Bulgarian split squat is a single leg pattern. That's a great movement. We know that. No one's debating that. But if you're trying to build to a heavy load with an Anderson squat, where we're essentially working on different positions of the squat pattern, do it by itself. Don't do it as a superset. If you wanted to do a superset here with Bulgarian split squats, I would do something that potentially is more posterior chain, like more like glute ham raise or RDL or something of that nature. But to be honest, Bulgarian split squats are a demanding movement. People need to do those and rest between sets. Okay, so that's how I would do it. I don't think the superset makes sense at all. Anderson squat's a great movement to have as a main lift of the day. Do it early in your session. Rest between sets. Build to anywhere from a 1 to 5 RM with that lift. Okay, and it's a phenomenal way to build absolute strength. I love Anderson squats, but I just don't agree with how it's done here. And then we're going into some RDLs, some step-ups, and then a bike cool-down. Okay, so if we think about this, he's done single leg in this program. It's been all sagittal plane. There's been no frontal plane, so I would do some more lateral work, landmine lateral squat, landmine lateral lunge, things of that nature. Even with a kettlebell is perfectly fine. Again, kind of overkill. We don't need to do as much as we have here. If I was to restructure this day, I would do our conventional deadlift, where we build potentially to a heavy set of 1 to 3 reps. Okay, we don't need to go super high with those reps. And even this scheme, 10, 10, 6, 3, and asking someone to build to 90%, again, how's that guy with a 700-pound deadlift going to do? I know he wouldn't do well with that. It's not going to work for him. And if it doesn't work for him, we got to think about kind of the greatest good for the greatest number. And with this would be conventional deadlift, we build to heavy 3 across 6 or 7 sets, and we rest 3 minutes between sets. Number 2, I would do an Anderson front squat. And again, it doesn't have to be a max. We could just build to a heavy load across 4 to 5 sets. Maybe it's 3 reps. We're setting the pins at parallel, and we're having people build. And I would go with a front squat pattern just because conventional deadlift, obviously more posterior. I would go with more anterior, so I would go front squat as my main. I would rest 2 to 3 minutes between sets of that. And then I would hit my RDLs, I would hit my step-ups, and then I'd hit some core work. We've done all essentially anti-extension, flexion-based core work. I would do some rotation, anti-rotation, or even just a loaded carry, front rack carry. Anything in here to add some diversity to this programming. It needs it. It's very, I would say, plain, and we're kind of doing a lot of the same things multiple times here. So let's look at day 5 of this program, which is our second upper body session, and see what we have. All right, so for this day, we are starting off with some barbell military press, which is good because we've already bench pressed twice during this week. And if you think about just kind of the volume that we did on those days, keep that in mind for when we look at this session. So we're building in weight. He's got a tempo again. Not sure what that tempo means. 2 minutes rest. Probably could go much higher, especially with 92% of your 1RM with a 1 second tempo. So is it 1 second raise? Is it 1 second at the top? Is it 1 second lower? I don't know. You don't know? The end user doesn't know, but they need to know if you're going to use a tempo. 92% with a 1 second tempo, 2 minutes rest. Not enough rest, okay, guys? So go higher on the rest. You guys that have seen my reviews, you know I say the same thing. People are trying to ask people to do crazy loads, but they're not letting them rest enough. So that's our main movement of the day. And then we got a superset of some bicep curls and some tricep extensions. I like that. It's a push-pull superset, perfectly fine. I probably would go a little bit more rest in here. It's 60 seconds rest after the superset. I would go resting 45 seconds between exercises, but that's personal preference. Weighted dips is our next exercise of the day. I would have done that earlier. Okay, so I would have done that after my military press. Again, the question is that a good place for it because we've just pressed heavy? Potentially it could be, and I think that, in this case, I probably would have done some row work or some pull-up work, or, again, just something that's a little bit different just to keep things a little bit more organized. But for what it is, I would move the dips after the military press, and let's see what we've got going here. We've got 90 seconds rest, 10, 5, 3. Again, there's a tempo. I don't know what that tempo means. We're adding weight with these. So I would say, is there a rest interval? There is 90 seconds rest. I would potentially go, if you're doing a set of 3 heavy dips, let's go 2 minutes rest, all right, before you hit that set, okay? And then we've got cable chest flies, 3 sets of 10, and then a superset of more bicep rope curls and tricep pushdowns, okay? So I don't have any issues with that. I think the order of this day is a little bit off. The tempos don't make sense. All right, guys, the last thing I want to say about this program is that there is really no aerobic conditioning in this program. Now, someone coming from the CrossFit world that wants to really focus on lifting, I can see foregoing some conditioning for a certain length of time. But the reality is that we can plug in some aerobic conditioning, some low-intensity work, zone 2 style cyclical work, and have it improve recovery and get us further along, closer to our goals. Okay, now, I don't think that we have to remove that from any program to get someone in the position where they gain strength and mass. But this program doesn't have any of that. And I think that you'll find that a lot of people coming from the CrossFit world that get into a program that is geared at maybe the former CrossFit or someone that wants to focus more on lifting. I think you'll be hard-pressed to find people that are not saying, hey, where's the conditioning? We're not doing any longer duration conditioning. So there is a place for that. I think every program should have it. And in this program, we could certainly have it. There's room for it. There are plenty of places. That conditioning and core day could be 30 to 40 minutes of mixed aerobic work, something like I went over on Marcus Philly's program, which is done very well, where we're doing a lot of different things and we're keeping it interesting, but we're also getting people in a position where they can improve their aerobic system and have it carry over to their other sessions, their strength and their hypertrophy work. So again, just kind of something to think about. All right, guys, so after reviewing this program, there are a lot of things that we could potentially adjust and make this program better. I think there should be a level of aerobic conditioning, especially if this is going to be for someone that's coming from the CrossFit world. But needless to say, there is some structure in place here that is decent. I've seen other programs that totally miss the mark. This program does not necessarily miss the mark, but there are some things that we can do better with. I'd like to have a little bit more clarity on those tempos. I'd like to clean up those days, maybe streamline them a little bit, be a little bit more mindful of our rest intervals. Of course, with our heavy lifts, we want to go longer and make sure that if we're trying to go up to 92% of our 1RM, that we are resting long enough to achieve that. So overall, I think that this program does have the makings of something that could be a solid program. With some small tweaks, I think we can make this program significantly better. So with that said, I'm going to approve this program and we'll see you on the next review.
Best program available on the internet today.
I think it's very difficult to find a trainer like Jason that...
Since joining Everyday Heroes, I feel like I've stopped working out and actually started training.